My name is D.C. Clark. I'm an exercise physiologist here at Lancaster General's Cardiac Rehab, and we're going to talk today about the importance of exercise. Our first topic is going to be aerobic exercise, which is one of the main types of exercise that's important for your cardiac recovery. And often people think of aerobic exercise as a lot of different types of things. Jumping up and down, doing cartwheels, going off of a trampoline, but that's not exactly what we had in mind here in cardiac rehab. Aerobic exercise is a continuous, rhythmic type of exercise that uses large muscle groups like the shoulders, the back, the legs, the arms, the chest, and it increases the heart rate through the entire duration of the exercise. So it gets it higher than what it would be at a resting state. It's also known as cardiovascular exercise, which tends to make you think it has some implications with the heart and the vascular system. And it's extremely important for our overall health. So more than just our heart, but also our lungs, our kidneys, pancreas, liver, and even brain function. There are many benefits of aerobic exercise. First and foremost, it strengthens the cardiovascular system, allowing the heart and lungs to work more efficiently. This helps to improve individuals' resting and exercising blood pressures and heart rates. Increases the strength and endurance of the muscles performing the exercise. So if you're doing an exercise that focuses mostly on the lower body, then the lower body muscles will get stronger, and vice versa. If you have an exercise that focuses on the upper body, then the upper body muscles will get stronger. Also improves cholesterol levels. Helps to increase your good cholesterol, which should be greater than 40, and helps to decrease your bad cholesterol, which should be less than 70. Helps to improve blood sugar control, which is important for individuals who are diabetic as well as those who are not diabetic. Helps control levels of stress, and we have stressors from all different types of situations. We have family-related stress, we have financial stress, we have work-related stress. Some of these stressors we can change, some of these stressors we have no control over, but what we do have control over is how we allow that stress to affect our body. Exercise has been proven to help control our levels of stress. Improvements in self-esteem. Individuals are getting stronger, they're feeling better. Naturally, they're going to feel better about themselves as well as those around them. Helps to expend calories, which can lead to a healthier weight. Improvements in circulation, better sleeping patterns, more restful sleeping. Weight-bearing aerobic exercise helps to improve bone density, whether you're male or female. Helps to reduce feelings of depression, which is very common after having a cardiac procedure, and improves mental awareness and cognition. There's an acronym that's called F.I.T.T. It's the F.I.T.T. principle of aerobic exercise. F.I.T.T. standing for frequency, intensity, type, and time. And it helps give us a little bit more information and detail about aerobic exercise. For frequency, it's recommended to exercise 4 to 6 days a week for individuals who've had a cardiovascular event. In cardiac rehab, we'll be starting out with 2 days a week, coming every Tuesday and Thursday, and then eventually moving to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, where you'll be coming 3 days a week. So we are accounting for 50% of that recommendation. The other 50% should occur at home or in a way that you can do your exercise in addition to what we're doing in here. The I stands for intensity of aerobic exercise, and this lets us know how much is enough. One way for us to determine the appropriate intensity is by using target heart rate. This is the rate or range that an individual should exercise to, where the exercise is considered a good workout, but also safe. The exercise intensity should be increased if the target heart rate is not yet achieved, or decrease if the target heart rate is exceeded. There are several different ways that we can determine target heart rate, and here are a few examples. The first method that we use for every individual who comes into cardiac rehab is by taking 1/3 above our resting heart rate. Example 1, if we have an individual who has a resting heart rate of 60 beats per minute, if we take 1/3 of that 60 beats per minute, which would be 20, and add it back to the resting heart rate of 60, that particular individual would have a target heart rate of 80 beats per minute for that exercise session. If that same individual came in on day 2 and had a resting heart rate of 75 beats per minute, again, if we took 1/3 of that, which would be 25, and added back to the resting heart rate of 75, then their target heart rate for day 2 would be 100 beats per minute. So the resting heart rate fluctuates, causing the target heart rate to fluctuate. After the first couple of weeks, what we'll do is we'll develop an average resting heart rate, because of all the changes in resting heart rates. At that point in time, we'll then start to take 20 to 50% above their average resting heart rate. So for example, that same individual, if their average resting heart rates turned out to be 68 beats per minute, then 20 to 50% of that would give us a range of 82 to 102. So as long as they stayed within that range, they're exercising at an appropriate intensity according to their target heart rate. If they would exceed the range, then we would ask them to slow down, make sure that they felt comfortable. If they did not quite get to the range, then we would ask them to increase the exercise intensity to make it a little bit more challenging. There are a couple of different reasons why an individual would exceed their target heart rate. One is through overexertion. They're doing more than what they should, and we have to have a conversation with them about backing off and slowing down. A second reason would be if they had not taken their medications that day. Medications control blood pressure, control heart rate in some cases, and failure to take them can have a pretty immediate effect. So another conversation has to take place to make sure that the individual understands the importance of taking their medication every day, preferably the same time of day. If those two reasons aren't the culprit for why the individual's heart rate is exceeding their target heart rate, what we'll do is we'll keep an eye on it, and if it becomes a consistent theme, we'll contact their physician and find out what they want to do about it. One thing that they might want to do is allow the individual to exercise at a higher range if the physician feels it's appropriate. So take that same individual who had a resting heart rate of 68, a target range of 82 to 102, but they're exercising comfortably in the 120s and 130s. The physician might say that's fine, just don't let them go above 130. So the physician is essentially assigning a ceiling heart rate based on the exercising heart rates that we see here in cardiac rehab. Another way is by using the individual's age. So if the physician doesn't feel comfortable assigning a ceiling heart rate solely on their exercising rates, they might ask us to take their age into a formula. In this case, we take 220 minus the individual's age multiplied by 70 to 85%. So for example, if we have an individual who's 50 years old, if we took 220 minus 50, we get 170, multiplied by 70 to 85%, we now have a target range of 119 to 145 for this individual. And lastly, we can use what's called a treadmill stress test. Some individuals have already had this prior to coming into cardiac rehab. This is where they take an individual, put them on a treadmill, and gradually increase the speed and the incline over a period of time to the point where the individual has to stop. The exercise is too much. This is much different than what we exercise individuals at cardiac rehab. We're looking more for a comfortable level of exercise. But when they do a treadmill stress test, they're looking to stress the individual to see if there's any cardiac problems. What they'll then do is take the individual's maximum heart rate achieved on the stress test and then multiply that number by 70 to 85%. You would never want to exercise on a daily basis at the maximum heart rate that you achieved on the stress test. For those of you who had a treadmill stress test and you remember how difficult that was, you wouldn't want to do that on a daily basis. So a much more aerobic, safe range would be 70 to 85%, what gives us a target heart rate in this example of 105 to 128. Another way that we can determine exercise intensity is by using what's called a rating of perceived exertion, also known as RPE. This is a method of rating the level of difficulty experienced when performing an exercise, taking all things considered: the legs, the arms, the muscles, the joints, the breathing, overall fatigue. How did the exercise feel? What we're looking for is for the overall effort to be somewhere in the range of 12 to 14 on the RPE scale. The RPE scale looks like this. It's numbered 6 to 20, 6 being the easiest exercise you can possibly imagine, something like sitting down watching television, twiddling your thumbs, up to 20 being the most challenging, difficult, hardest exercise you can possibly imagine, something similar to a treadmill stress test or even trying to run a marathon. We obviously don't want you at either of these extremes. We prefer to stay somewhere in the middle of 12 to 14. This indicates the exercise was somewhat hard, challenging, you were able to hold a conversation, and at the end you felt like you were getting a good workout. If you were to exceed this range into the 15 or higher category, then we would want to slow down and reduce the exercise because it's not necessarily the safest way of exercising. And if you were to be lower than the 12 and be in the 11 or less category, we would need to increase it. The reason being, you're going to get more benefit from doing an exercise where you feel that it's challenging than by doing an exercise that's just easy. So we want to make sure we're on the same page. If you say that an exercise was pretty easy and we go to increase it, you'll know why. And if you say the exercise was hard and we say then we want to back it off and decrease it, you'll understand why. There's different types of aerobic exercise, and this is the first T in that FIT acronym. Walking, jogging, bicycling, swimming, aerobics, treadmill walking, stationary bicycling, lots of different types of aerobic exercise. The key with all of these is that they're sustained for a continuous period of time in an aerobic manner. They increase your heart rate and again use multiple muscle groups. Now it's important that we choose exercises that we enjoy. There's a lot of different exercises that we have available to us in cardiac rehab. Our goal is that you enjoy what you're doing. So we're going to try everything that you're physically capable of trying, and if there's something that you're not really happy with or not really excited to do, all you have to do is let us know and we can try something different. Again, our goal is to make sure that you're getting the benefit of the exercise but also having a good time at the same time. And the last T in the FIT acronym stands for time, the amount of time we should exercise aerobically. It's recommended ideally for us to achieve 35 to 45 minutes of continuous exercise. Now, when you're first starting your rehab and you're just in the initial stages of your recovery, we're not going to start with 35 minutes right off the bat. But what we will do is start off with a certain amount of time, could be 10 minutes, could be 15, could be 20, or even a little bit more, and then gradually each time you come in, do a little bit more as you progress through the program. Eventually you will be at 35 to 45 minutes. It might seem like a lot right now, but after a few weeks you'll see how it's actually not too much. This can also be achieved in multiple sessions, especially if you're going to be exercising at home and you feel like 35 to 45 minutes is a little bit more than what you can do at one time. You can do 10 or 15 minutes one part of the day, 10 or 15 minutes another part of the day, and if you do that 2 to 3 times, you've achieved 35 to 45 minutes. It's important in your initial stages of recovery to start out slow and then progress to a rate or in a range that you're able to tolerate more. It's very important that you warm up before you exercise. The warm-up consists of low-level calisthenic and stretching exercises, gradually increases your heart rate, blood pressure, and body temperature. Not only is it a physical preparation, but it's also a psychological preparation that helps with your exercise. It gets your body and your mind ready to exercise and doesn't take a long period of time, only about 5 to 10 minutes. And then we're finishing off with our cool-down exercise, which is exactly opposite of the warm-up. Low-level walking and stretching exercises that gradually reduce our heart rate and our body temperature and our blood pressure and try to return us to a resting state. Helps to improve flexibility, helps to prevent sensations of soreness or discomfort related to our exercise, and any lightheaded, dizzy, or nauseous feelings that can result after exercising. And again, doesn't take a long period of time, only 5 to 10 minutes. The next type of exercise we're going to talk about is called isometric exercise, which is much different than aerobic. And this is where you perform an activity that involves tensing the muscles and the joints that those muscles are attached to. This includes heavy lifting, pushing, pulling, or carrying objects. The problem with isometric exercise is not the actual exercise, but the way that many people perform them. They have a tendency to hold their breath. This is called the Valsalva maneuver, and when individuals hold their breath and exert force and energy, the problem that can happen is that we get a sudden increase in blood pressure and heart rate and also pressure within the chest cavity. This is generally not a good thing. Examples would be moving furniture, heavy furniture, overhead arm work for a sustained period of time, carrying laundry, and even snow shoveling. All these activities are isometric in nature and have a tendency to encourage us to hold our breath. What we recommend is that when you're doing these activities, first of all, make sure that you are able to do so and capable of doing so in your appropriate amount of time of recovery. Also, make sure you're breathing as you're performing these activities. Simply breathing can make a big improvement on the amount and level that our heart rates and our blood pressures go. As you can see in the slide, snow shoveling has a star next to it because many cardiologists will recommend that their patients do not perform this activity. The activity mixed with the cold weather and the amount of time that we perform it sometimes can have lethal results. The next type of exercise that we focus on is called strength training, which is slightly different than isometric exercise, but extremely important. It's also an exercise that challenges our muscles to the point where they become slightly fatigued. Strength training is very important, increases the strength and definition of the muscles that are exercising. This also helps to improve the ability of performing aerobic exercise. So if we're doing an aerobic exercise such as walking or going up the steps or using one of the bicycles, if you find that your muscles are getting tired, doing strength training is going to help make those muscles stronger and able to perform aerobic exercise better. Improves bone density, helps to decrease our risk of developing osteoporosis and other forms of arthritis. Increases the total amount of calories that are expended, helps with weight management. Improvements in blood sugar control. Reduces, reverses, slows down the process of atrophy as a result of aging, also as a result of being in the hospital for an extended period of time. So whether you were in the hospital for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, or in some cases a couple of months, you've probably noticed that you're weaker now than what you were then, before being hospitalized. So these type of exercises help to get back what you lost. Improvements in balance, coordination, and reaction time, and also makes activities of daily living easier to perform. Simple tasks such as walking, climbing steps, doing yard work and housework, carrying groceries, any type of physical work related to employment, athletic activities such as golfing or bowling or other sporting activities, all become easier from doing strength training exercises. Examples of strength training would include free weights like dumbbells and barbells, machine weights that are both air pressurized or selectorized, and other devices like bands, cords, exercise balls, and weighted balls are all examples of ways we can do strength training exercises. Guidelines for strength training are different than aerobic. If you recall, aerobic exercise we were recommending 4 to 6 days a week. With strength training, we're recommending 2 to 3 days per week. And instead of counting the amount of time, with aerobic it was 35 to 45 as our goal. With strength training, we're trying to perform each exercise for a certain number of repetitions and a certain number of sets. 8 to 15 repetitions for each exercise, and we can do each exercise 1 to 3 times. It's important to perform strength training exercises in a controlled manner with good form and technique, and it's also extremely important that we breathe when we're doing our exercises, exhaling on the lifting phase of the exercise and inhaling on the relaxation phase. Now we're going to talk a little bit about calories and how it relates to weight loss. Many people are trying to lose weight to help improve their cardiovascular health, and doing so can be accomplished by a couple of different ways. First of all, when you have caloric balance, it means the calories in are the same as the calories out. We need calories from our foods that we consume in order to have energy to perform activities throughout the course of the day. Those activities include breathing, thinking, and physical activity and exercise. When we have balance, our weight stays the same. And when one is greater than the other on a consistent basis, then our weight changes. And it's up to us to decide whether it's a good change or a bad change. There are roughly 3,500 calories in a single pound of fat. So that is how much we need to essentially burn in order to lose a pound of weight loss. So a realistic goal is to reduce our calories by 250 to 400 calories per day. This can be done by making dietary changes, also increasing our physical activity, and being consistent with our aerobic exercise. There's different type of activities that we perform throughout the course of the day, some of which would be considered strenuous, which burn a lot of calories but generally are more difficult to sustain. Some are light activities which don't really burn many calories but can be performed for a much longer length of time. What we generally recommend is trying to focus more on moderate intensity activities, which burn a fair amount of calories and are generally safer on the body than strenuous activities and can be sustained for a long period of time. These are the activities that should comprise the majority of our physical activity. So some examples would be strenuous ones: running a 9 or a 7 minute mile, playing tackle football, which many of you might not want to do right now, swimming at a fast rate, racquetball, and downhill skiing. These are activities, as you note, burn lots of calories, but probably would be extremely difficult at this stage of time to do for an hour. Then there's light activities such as cleaning the house, doing simple office work, even playing golf would be in that category. So we tend to focus more on moderate activities such as walking briskly, doing yard work, doing a little dancing. These are activities, as you note, can burn a fair amount of calories, but again are done at a safer rate for that period of time. The activity pyramid helps us to focus on our physical activity. At the bottom of the pyramid are activities that we should try to do on a daily basis. Things like walking the dog, doing yard work, housework, playing golf, bowling, parking the car further from the entrance and walking, if capable, doing the stairs instead of the elevator. And then 4 to 6 days a week, even though it says 3 to 5, 4 to 6 days per week, doing aerobic exercise. 3 days a week doing strength training exercises, and then trying to limit and cut down any type of activity that would be considered sedentary in nature. Sitting for long periods of time, watching television for long periods of time, being on the computer for an extended period of time. These are activities that might be necessary, but for long periods of time tend to not help us with our weight loss goals. It's important in your recovery and rehab to be aware of signs and symptoms of overexertion. As individuals are starting to feel better and are starting to recover from their cardiac event, it's natural that they want to try to do more than before. But sometimes we do too much, and our body lets us know that we've overdone it. Sometimes we get excessive fatigue and we have the inability to relax or get comfortable when trying to sleep. We are abnormally tired and we end up taking more naps than normal. We have severe muscle soreness that lasts for more than just a day, but for several days. We have abnormal or unusual joint pains, something we've never really felt before or in a different location. Or we have anginal symptoms such as chest pain, pressure, tightness, squeezing or discomfort, something that reminds us of our initial cardiac event. If this happens, it's recommended that we use our nitro. If you've had open heart surgery, it's recommended that you call 911. Our last section is talking about guidelines for exercise. First, we'll start with warm weather guidelines. If the temperature is greater than 85 degrees, we recommend exercising in an air-conditioned building to avoid any heat-related complications. Exercise in the early morning is ideal, or late evening. Drinking lots of water to avoid dehydration. If we wait until our bodies tell us that we're thirsty, then it's already too late. Reducing exercise intensity. Exercise in the shade if possible. And do a longer cool down, as well as making sure that our clothing is comfortable and lightweight. Cold weather guidelines would include exercising indoors if colder than 35 degrees, doing a longer warm-up, layering our clothing to provide appropriate protection from the cold, and being careful of the wind chill, which can make our body work a lot harder. Sometimes it's suggested to cover our mouth and nose with a scarf or bandana to help temper the air as it hits your lungs. And finally, we have general guidelines such as choosing an exercise you enjoy, which we spoke about earlier, reducing our speed when going uphill. The best time to exercise is about a half an hour to an hour prior to eating. This is when your blood sugars will be at their peak. Also, this will help aid in digestion of the food. The larger the meal, the longer you should wait. Trying to quit smoking and using tobacco products if possible. Smoking is a leading cause of preventable death. Wearing comfortable footwear for exercise. It takes approximately 3 to 6 months to break down the soles in our shoes or sneakers. So ideally, we should look to replace them about 2 to 3 times a year to avoid any joint or muscle problems. Making sure we're getting plenty of sleep. Recommended on average about 8 hours. Again, drinking lots of water before, during, and after exercise. And here in cardiac rehab, we will continually offer you water. We do so because we want to make sure that as you're exercising, you're perspiring, you're evaporating water through perspiration. We want to make sure that you're not getting to a stage where you're dehydrated, which makes your heart and your kidneys work much harder. And finally, we would like to have you regulate your caffeine intake. Caffeine can cause an increase in heart rate and blood pressure, cause nervousness, headaches, and palpitations, and also acts as a diuretic, which has a tendency to make you dehydrate quicker than normal. If you have any questions about any of this information, please do not hesitate to ask one of your cardiac rehab staff. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. Hope you've learned something, hope it's been helpful, and I hope you've enjoyed your experience here at Lancaster General's Cardiac Rehab.